The story I am about to tell happened to my friend Emily and me last summer in the Sam Houston National Forest in East Texas. Emily and I decided to go on a camping trip. We've been best friends since childhood, and our shared love for adventure and the great outdoors had brought us there. The reason for our camping trip was pretty simple. We needed a break from the hustle and bustle of city life. We both love the outdoors, the woods, wildlife, and a sense of peace that you just can't get in the city. We wanted to enjoy the outdoors, unplug from our devices, and reconnect with nature. After a day of hiking and fun, we set up camp in a beautiful clearing, surrounded by huge trees. The sun got low, so we started a small campfire and shared stories. We were laughing and reminiscing about our childhood. The night was calm and amazing at first. We were having such a good time. But very quickly, things went south. A little after midnight, Emily and I decided to call it a night. We threw some water on the fire and headed to our tents, each one only a few feet apart from the other. Inside my tent, I wished Emily a good night and closed my eyes. I don't know how much time went by, but shortly after I dozed off, I woke up when I started hearing noises from the wood line. At first, it was like a grunting noise. I told myself to chill, and that it was probably a deer or something. Maybe it was a deer snort rather than a grunt. Well, that instantly changed when the grunts turned to growls. Low, guttural growls. Whatever it was sounded absolutely massive. There was something else too that I noticed that I hadn't before when I first started hearing the grunts. It was completely silent. There was nothing. No crickets, no frogs, no bugs. Absolutely nothing. By this time, I'm pretty terrified now, and I start calling for Emily. She was wide awake too. I asked her if she was hearing the same thing that I was, and she said that she was. Neither of us knew what the hell to do. We were miles from anything and had nowhere to go. I told her I was coming over, and so I grabbed my phone and things and hurried over to her tent. Once I got over there, we went back and forth about what to do. We were out in the middle of nowhere and had absolutely no cell phone reception. The growls kept coming and they were getting louder. We started hearing branches breaking too. There was something out there. It sounded really large, and it seemed like it was pissed. We finally decided that we should get a fire going again. We just didn't know what else to do. Luckily, we still had a bunch of wood, and so we hopped out of the tent and got to work. I got a flashlight and started pointing it at the woods, but didn't see anything. Emily was working on the fire, and at first it was hard to get one going because we had dumped water on the previous one. But after some work, we finally got it going. I set my light down to grab more wood, and all of a sudden I looked over at Emily, and she was looking out at the wood line, and she was shaking, almost violently. I called out to her, but she was absolutely petrified. I kept asking her what it was and what was going on, but she couldn't say anything. Finally, she kind of motioned her head towards the woods and said, "There's something staring at us." I looked over at the wood line, and at first I didn't see anything, but then I saw it. It was a massive silhouette of something, and it looked like it was creeping behind a tree. When I say massive, I don't mean large. I mean it was absolutely massive. All I could make out was a shoulder, arm, and half of a head at first. It looked like it was hairy all over. And then, it stepped out from the tree that it was behind. It was upright, completely covered in hair and on two legs. Its arms were unnaturally long and it looked like it had hands. It's hard to tell, but if I had to guess the height of what I was looking at, I would say that it had to have been between 8 and 9 feet tall. It's hard to describe in words just how big this thing was. What I'm about to say next is where I lose most people in the very few times that I've told this story. When it came out from behind the tree and looked at us, its eyes were glowing red. I swear on everything, they were glowing. It wasn't eye shine. They were glowing, and they were red. And I say it was a thing because it was not a man. The way it moved was so fluid that it couldn't be a man in a suit, and it was way too large. It went behind another tree, and for a moment it was completely silent. Nothing. And then we heard a blood-curdling scream. It was so loud and so powerful that both of us believed that we were going to die. Both of us gripped each other and started crying, almost uncontrollably, just shaking and crying and not knowing what to do. The thing was growling and moving around, and we could hear branches breaking all over. We stood there absolutely frozen. Then at some point during all of this, I snapped out of it. I came to the realization that we were out in the middle of nowhere and had nowhere to go. I looked at Emily and shook her a little bit to try to snap her out of it too. She looked at me and I said, "Listen, we need to get this fire going as much as possible. We need to make it big." She nodded and I told her to start throwing more wood on it. So she started doing that and I grabbed the flashlight again. I pointed it towards the wood line, but whatever it wasn't there anymore. It wasn't gone, but it wasn't where it was standing before. I don't know, but something told me that maybe the light will keep it away. And so that's what I did. I turned the flashlight on high beam and pointed it at the wood line. I started scanning the wood line back and forth, back and forth. I was terrified. If it wasn't where we had seen it earlier, where was it? Did it go back into the woods? Was it sneaking up on us? I didn't know, and that absolutely terrified me. I scanned all around the perimeter of our campsite and didn't see anything, so I at least felt like it wasn't sneaking up on us. Seconds felt like minutes, minutes felt like hours, and hours felt like days. All I could think to do was just keep fire and light going and wait it out, and then get the hell out of there as soon as there was daylight. And so that's what we did. For probably 3 hours we kept wood on the fire, and I kept constantly scanning the woods with my flashlight. During this time we continued to hear growls, rustling, and branches breaking. It seemed like the fire and the light were working though. There were 2 other times that I saw glowing, or what I believed to be its eyes in the woods. Both times it was at a distance, and both times they ducked out as soon as my flashlight hit them. Eventually, as the sun started coming up, the noises started retreating. There were fewer and fewer growls and fewer branch breaks. The sun finally topped out over the horizon, and we didn't hear anything else. When we were confident that whatever it was gone, we grabbed our phones and backpacks and headed out. We left the tents, fire, and everything else behind. We were probably about 4 miles out from the car, and so we made our way back as quickly as possible, scanning the woods as we went. When we finally got back to the car, we hopped in and drove away as fast as we could. We never returned for our tents and haven't been back since. After telling this story to a few close family and friends, it was clear that they thought we were crazy. They asked if we were drinking. They asked if we were doing drugs. And the answer to all of these questions has always been no. And so eventually we quit telling this story to everyone. To this day, I don't know what it was that we saw that night, but I do know for certain that there is something absolutely terrifying out there, and Emily and I will never venture out into those woods ever again at night. That's my story. It happened, and nobody will ever convince me that I didn't see what I saw or experience what I experienced. Thanks for tuning in to another episode from the Alley of Nightmares. If you enjoyed the video, please like it, subscribe, and share with all your friends. Until next time.